Folks, welcome into the closing line, October the 19th, 2017. It is Thursday, finally over hump day. We do have some football back in our life. NFL football is going to take place then, as well as NCAA football. Got a Major League Baseball game. That's pretty interesting as well. Welcome to the show, everybody, once again on the closing line presented by SportsbookReview.com. I'll be your host tonight, as well as guest resident host on Thursday night, every single Thursday throughout the football season here. Teddy Sevransky, also known, obviously, as Teddy Covers throughout the channel. Teddy, welcome into the show tonight, buddy.
Donnie, you're so smooth with the intro, man.
Look at that, man. All these years, I finally put it together, Teddy.
I'm telling you, that was network quality intro right there, man. Well done.
No, we're gonna have some good fun tonight. Again, Teddy hit it up on the live chat there. We're ready to go. Ask away any questions that you have. NCAA football, whatever's on your mind. The Major League Baseball, the game. We will have a lot of fun tonight. But just asking Teddy, your week. I know you meet up with a lot of people out there living in Las Vegas. What's the good word on the street for this week for us?
The fact that NBA started like 2 weeks early, and it changes your lifestyle, because all of a sudden now you've got, football goes at a nice pace. It really does. All right, there's a game on Monday, there's a couple games on Thursday, there's a couple games on Friday, but mostly you have all week to get your wagers down, to think about games. You don't have to bet everything on Monday or two, all week long. You get to think about it. But, basketball changes that dynamic in a hurry. So, all of a sudden, you're doing your football work the way you've been doing it. Mm-hmm. And now, oh, by the way, here comes NBA. Go to town. I know that for the guys that do NHL, it's the same story. This time of year, at least for the guys that I know, is the busiest time of the entire season. So a lot of guys, you talk to them at the beginning of October, and then you won't talk to them again until Christmas.
You're right about that. I mean, pretty soon we're coming up again on college basketball, so spend your time wisely. Being a handicapper is probably the best word of the day for it. But you're right, Teddy. By the way, I meant to ask you, NBA. I mean, we're all cappers in the business and like sports. I don't follow the NBA as much as I would follow college basketball. There, are you how independent? I won't even say independent. How excited are you for the NBA season, betting it, and how do you approach, even if you are betting it, Teddy, the opening of the first couple weeks in the NBA season?
Okay, I'm not a fan of anything. I was an NBA fan growing up, but now I'm way beyond being a fan. Those days are done. So it's a matter of, what am I paying attention to that I think I can make money with? And I love in that regard, I absolutely love the NBA. I love it in November, now it's October. I love it, early season. I love it mid-season. And a lot of times I love it late season and then postseason as well. And there are so many bettors that get frustrated with the NBA. So many bettors that lose betting the NBA. So many professionals that don't get involved with the NBA, that if you're spending the time with it, I think it's a ripe market. And I think that in the NBA, more than any of the other, major league, the four major sports in the U.S., in the NBA is where you can find teams that are legitimately mispriced for the longest amount of time. We have a team they're just priced wrong, and the markets, especially not necessarily coming out of the gate, but especially if a team was mediocre or bad coming out of the gate, and then somebody comes back, or a switch gets flipped, or the schedule works there, and you see teams go on monster point spread runs every year, December, January, February. I mean, and you find those teams, you identify them, you make a lot of money with them. So that's what I like about NBA. When it comes to the first week of the season, I don't mean to cut you off, Donnie.
No, go ahead. Yep.
I sometimes ramble on this, and if I do, please cut me off. But in this instance, when it comes to the beginning of the season, it's the same thing that I'm doing with any other sport at the beginning of the season. Find your information, go to your local sources, read about what's going on. You see so many people. I see other analysts early in the season. They talk about how good a team's going to be, and look at the offseason moves. I don't give a shit about their offseason moves. Okay, I care. Did they get on the floor together in the preseason? Did they? I'm not saying I don't give a shit about the moves, but that's not the key for game 1, game 2 of the season. I want the teams that were playing together in the preseason, again, in opportunities against teams that weren't playing together in the preseason, where everyone was hurt and this guy was out and that guy was out and nobody was on the floor. And that's how you make money the first week of the NBA season. And it really is that simple. And it's something that works every single year. So you just Google News everything. You Google News, read all your local beat writers, find out what happened the last week, the week or two of the preseason, which teams are ready and which teams aren't. Bang. If you, again, it's not easy. You got to do your work. You got to do your due diligence. But if you do that due diligence, you will find winners. That's why I like that's why I like the NBA.
Teddy, betting like live or in-game with NBA, I seem like we all do it. College football, injury happens, or you just like the flow of the game. You think you're going to be able to steal some points or how the game's going to end up. In the NBA, it seems to me, Teddy, it's all about runs there. Obviously, 24-second shot clock, you're going to get shots up quick. A couple misses here, a couple made threes can really swing and get back in your way. Opening night, we saw the same thing in both of those basketball games. We had one team get out to, 15, 16, 17, 18-point lead, and there you go, heading down late in the fourth quarter. That game was all but tied up or even swing, and both of the underdogs had a legitimate shot. Both covered, one outright. The other one came close to the wire. Do you bet any in-game NBA basketball, Teddy?
Yeah, but I'm always taking points. I'm always taking the team that's at the end that's getting slapped around. If it's a game where I think that there has a potential for a run in them, then you go through the long regular season in the NBA. Teams lay down all the time. There's nobody. They get punched. The punchback isn't there. And especially as we start to get a feel, and this doesn't happen. In terms of live betting, I wasn't live betting last night. I didn't live bet on Tuesday night, so I didn't get involved in either one of those games that you were talking about. But I watched, and what I'm trying to do the first week and a half, I want to get a feel for what's the personality. I find teams that I have here's a personality. This is how they play. This is how the runs go. This is how the rotations are. And the more teams you get a feel about that, the better you do with in-game wagering when you're taking points, and you get a sense of which teams are going to fight back, which teams have that in them, and which teams don't. So, but in general, the way I'm betting the NBA in-game is, I'm always taking the team that's down, that's down. I'm always taking the team that the other team just made a run against them, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way you got. That's the strategy that I found that works for me.
Yeah, interesting games tonight in the NBA card if you're looking at them. There's only 3 games tonight, much larger card there tomorrow on a Friday night, but, 2 double-digit spreads here and some interesting ones. You're looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight, how that's all going to come together. You have the Chicago Bulls who are fist-fighting each other in practice, and then you have the emergence tonight, the opening night, center court, the battle for Los Angeles tonight, not in football with the Rams, as they like to think it is, but Clippers, Lakers on the court tonight, Teddy. Of those 3 games, leaning towards any which one, because I know you had a sports bet. I saw the retweet come out there looking at the Clippers and the Lakers game. Anyway, in any one of those 3 games you might want to hit on here for interest, or maybe you can lean the guys in the live chat. Maybe you can win some money on that tonight.
From a betting standpoint, I did nothing. I did 0 on the 3 games. The one game that I would consider, and I haven't gotten there yet. Let me look at the number because I was tracking. I was waiting to see if something popped up. Yeah, there's 113 out there on the Knicks. I think I might see better than that before tip off. I haven't bet it yet. I might play the Knicks tonight, and not just because my one super square friend that hits about 5% in the NBA long term texted me. I haven't heard from him, and he texted me. He goes, OKC by 20 tonight.
There, yep, waiting on it.
And I don't think I've heard from him all summer. And when I say 5%, I'm being facetious, obviously, but I can tell you for a fact this guy's giving me texted me far more losers than winners over the course of our time together. But I don't know that OKC's ready to lay this price yet. I understand that they got 3 ball first guys. I understand that Carmelo wants to, make a statement to the Knicks. I'm not convinced they're going to mesh perfectly together right out of the get-go. And then the Knicks might end up being one of those scrappy teams that fights hard and hangs around. The Knicks didn't do well in terms of what they did in preseason. Lots of guys that hurt, the rotations aren't there. I'm not in love with it. This isn't a load up. There were far better bets on yesterday's card than today, and I think there are going to be some good bets on tomorrow's card as well. Certainly preliminary. I got 5 games circled already on a 10-game card tomorrow. So that's nice to see that type of interest. Lakers Clippers is the most interesting game to talk about. I think as opposed to the double digits, but Lakers last year, they were the worst defensive team in the league. Yes, they were the worst defensive team of the decade, Donnie.
Yes.
Okay, and now they're starting another one and done. The whole story with the NBA is the one and dones defensively not many of them know coming to the NBA knowing how to play defense. And I watched UCLA last year. Lonzo Ball is not going to come in this league knowing how to play defense. And you have a hideously bad defense that doesn't on paper look to be improved in any way, shape, or form. And that's at least part of the reason why we've seen nothing but Clippers money here in Las Vegas since this line opened.
No, it's an interesting card there tonight. I mean, stacking it up just from a viewing standpoint. If you're going to get 3 games, I mean, I'm not interested in betting the NBA overall as a total. I know Big Man on Campus does it a little bit more than me, but following along. But there is some intriguing, lines that are going to come out and see what's going to happen down the flow. Oklahoma City, how do they come together? Westbrook last year running up and down the court, all about him getting his triple doubles and winning the MVP. Now he's going to have to be more of a team player. So there's some really interesting storylines coming out. And again, Gordon Hayward going down in Boston. I mean, a lot of stuff. Looking forward to the NBA, Teddy. We'll leave it just on a couple pieces here. Going forward, did you have a team that you really liked coming into the season that you think can maybe excel, maybe that somebody's not looking at? I mean, we all know like the big 3, big 4 teams. If there's one team that you think could surprise maybe with a win total or play above their head this year?
Well, I mean, there's only one team in the NBA. Of all the leagues, the NBA's got the least drama. The Warriors will win the title. Barring injury, they will win the title. And there's no drama in it. The line, the single biggest favorite against the field in any sport in the history of professional sports odds making, according to the guys over at the Westgate Superbook. And I guess the 2 teams, there's a handful of teams that I like, but they're popular wise guy choices. The Bucks. The Bucks are a team that are going to make me money this year. I'm confident of that. Right out of the get-go, they won at Boston the other night. And I think they're going to beat the Cavs tomorrow night. So that's certainly one team stands out. Then, of course, the 76ers are a team that everyone knows. Philly's an interesting team to consider, although that bench got really badly outplayed last night, which is certainly a concern for Philadelphia. And Utah, a team that lost their starting point guard and lost their leading scorer, and the markets have devalued. I haven't devalued Utah that much, and they showed me last night when they just shut down. When it came to crunch time, end of third, beginning of the fourth quarter, that team plays lockdown defense in a way that few do, and they just ran the Nuggets off the floor in a matter of about a 6-minute span.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the NBA. Again, Teddy's going to be here throughout the year on Thursday nights. We'll have a lot of fun. Check him out on Sportsbook as well for your latest NBA updates. There's a big baseball game tonight here, Teddy. 8 p.m. pitch Eastern time, 5:05 Pacific. And Clayton Kershaw, normally you're looking at some of these lines, opening up at Pinnacle 148, Chris at 160, now sitting about in that mid-140s range here. Kershaw versus Quintana, both lefties up on the mound tonight. A little bit early in the day, I like to be contrarian. I don't have, a huge advantage or a huge edge in the playoffs, but when I see some plus money spots, which I think are decent shots, I took a little bit on the Chicago Cubs earlier today. Lineups come out. I don't like that Dodgers lineup overall, but Clayton Kershaw's on the mound. He's on full rest. It's going to be really hard for the Cubs to beat him. So I just took a little bit of a flyer, plus 146 earlier, Teddy, on the Cubs. Seeing anything in this Major League Baseball game that we can pick on here?
No, I didn't play it.
I can't blame
tonight's NFL game. I didn't play that either.
Yeah.
I played college football. You're going to involve college football tonight, but literally, so I mean, I'm not trying to force. I'm not trying to force action. I got plenty of action. But when it comes to the baseball game, look, my strategy in the postseason is bet the Dodgers as often as I can. That's all I want is the Dodgers. Dodgers are going to win the World Series. Dodgers are the team I want my money on. I had them last night. I had them the night before. I didn't play them tonight because the price wasn't right. And you say it got hard to beat Kershaw. Look at Kershaw's postseason track record. You can bet against Kershaw if you want to, but Dodgers are the better team. I don't trust the Cubs lineup.
I had the Dodgers a couple nights ago. I like that opinion there because early on, I mean, obviously you're looking at maybe Washington and the Dodgers. You thought they would match up. Obviously, it's not going to be the case. I think most of us had the Dodgers there, getting to the finish line, regardless of who they match up, Houston, or it looks like, the Yankees are going to come out of there. But the way the Dodgers are built with their bullpen, with their hitting, with their starting pitching, I think they're going to be okay. I still actually think, it's kind of crazy. You bet the Cubs tonight just because I thought there was I did because I thought there's a little bit of value. Would it surprise me if Kershaw goes out there tonight, Teddy, and goes 8 innings, 3 hits, one earned run, 2 walks or something like that? No, because that's what he does. But you're right. If you're looking at the past performance there in the playoffs, he certainly does struggle. It's a really big moment tonight. It's a closeout game on the opponent's field. We'll see how he shows up there. But I just took a little chunk there. Teddy, over under in this one, sitting at 7. Not much wind in the blowing out at regular like it was last night. So that line's sitting a little bit low. Sometimes I just like to be that, say, hey, 3-3. Can we get a 3-3 where I automatically get a push in this one? If you're betting playoff baseball, Teddy, overall, totals there, do you lean more towards unders? Because, when I'm growing up as a kid, it seemed like damn near every single playoff game was like 3-1, 2-1, a great pitch game. Most people can't hit, but a little bit different in these times. What would you look at on a total of 7 tonight there in Wrigley?
Nothing. I mean, I don't mean to laugh. You're like, this is the worst interview subject ever.
Yeah.
You're cracking me up. Your facial expressions are hilarious. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I would it's like when they hang like that 36.5 of the NFL. You're saying, damn, can't they at least get to 40 points in this one? So I mean, just rolling it out there. Playoff baseball, I like to think that it does go lower, but again, you're playing in Wrigley, you're playing in Yankee Stadium. I mean, 2 bandbox ballparks where get a hold of a couple pitches. Next thing you know, you got a couple 3-run home runs there. I would lean towards the over in this situation. I didn't play that at all. I just have a small piece on the Cubs there.
Well, we had 5 home runs hit last night. The game stayed under. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen all that often.
No, it doesn't.
But it did, and that's the concern. I mean, the Cubs, not only they're not hitting, they're not even getting base runners. They didn't take a walk again last night.
Yeah.
So if Kershaw is dealing, and the Dodgers bullpen has been phenomenal here in the postseason. Phenomenal. So if the Cubs, the Cubs haven't hit all series. They got 3 dingers last night, and they were, and they scored 3 runs. So I'm not in a rush to play this game over. But if you ask me for a gut feeling for tonight's game, I don't make a lot of bets based on gut feeling. My gut feeling says the Dodgers come out hitting. Big start for Quintana, L.A., who couldn't hit lefties at all last year, was crushing, lefties this season, and some of that with Bellinger, and Seager. But it's not a total. It's not. I mean, it's at 7. It's the right number. That's there are many games where you look at the numbers. Okay, the NFL total at 36.5. When it's 36.5, it's 36.5 for a reason. That's the right number. 7's the right number for this total.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I mean, it's something you'll be able to tune in. Got a lot of options tonight. You got NBA, NHL. Obviously you're going to have the college football games we're going to dip into in just a few moments. And you have the NFL football game, which, on paper should be a pretty good football game. We'll see what we get out of that one. Ted, let's talk a little college football tonight. 303, 304, Memphis and Houston. Looking at the line right now, it's dipped a little bit over the past hour and a half. I'm showing some -2s showing up here for Houston. So Memphis backers pushing that line down a little bit. Over under that one opened up around 61 and a half. Still sitting in that range. Sportsbook.com showing a 62, Greek 61 and a half. So you're going to get something around in that range here. Looking overall, to me, I like Houston in this situation. I'm not so sold on Memphis just because of the overall defense. They stepped up in class and competition whereas UCF and got pummeled. But, saying that, everybody's been getting pummeled by UCF. They do handle the teams like Connecticut here. I think Houston's going to be able to play a little bit of defense. Didn't take anything either way on this game, but small lean towards the Houston Cougars in the spot, Teddy. We looking anywhere that we might find any advantages here?
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. From a pure power rating standpoint, my number said Memphis should be favored. They should be road chalk, and I'm not the only person that that I've talked to this week that had that as a pure power rating or a pick 'em or hey, wow, how are the Cougs laying 3 here? Then you look at the situation. And you look at the 2 teams defensively, because Memphis' defense stinks. I mean, they forced 5 turnovers against Navy last week, which isn't easy to do. I'll give them credit for that. And I shouldn't say they stink, but because and it's not a game I watched. I didn't watch Memphis Navy, so I don't know if it was. I know what it had to be Navy not good, And the coach's quote after the game were, let's put it this way: I'm not stepping in front of Navy this week. After a 5 turnover game, even against a really good team like UCF, which that should be a great game. That's be a fun game to watch. Yeah. But not to get distracted. Memphis, Houston. every quote. I mean, you do your due diligence. You read your local papers. The Houston off that, the debacle at Tulsa last week. The multiple quotes from the juniors and the seniors. Hey, we practice like we had something to prove this week. This is not a joke. This is this is our season. We're playing like it. And for Memphis, oh, by the way, they're ranked for the first time since 2015 and going on and talking about, well, if we can run the table, mm-hmm. You worry about that. The coach is bitching about the spot. Oh, we got to travel on the short week, and we faced Navy last week, and this offense is nothing like Navy. There were multiple red flags from the Memphis side of the equation. So the money, of course, is going to come on Memphis. Memphis is the popular side. Memphis is the popular Thursday night underdog, and those, are also something to be a little bit concerned. I like the Cougars in this ball game, and if we've seen really close games, wild games between these two teams the last 2 years. I don't know if this one is quite as wild. The early sharp money came heavily on the under, and now this is public money that's been kind of pushing it up here on game day, pushing the total back up.
I agree with you there, Teddy. Even if you look at Houston's past games, you try to, it's hard to say, you want to take a game against another team and try to correlate it to another game. The Texas Tech game played decent in that one, 27-24 game. SMU, another up-tempo team, beat them 35-22, sort of fitting into that Memphis mold. Tulsa now, interesting, more of a fast-paced running-based team than what you've seen in the past when they like to throw it all over the ballpark. So if you try to take a look at some other games and try to match it up, Houston has played well against those up-tempo passing teams. I think it's a decent spot for them as well. And the fact they got blasted 45-17 last week, I don't think too many people saw that coming. -14 getting beat that bad. So hopefully, resurrected some. But again, I don't have much on this game overall, but I would be leaning towards Houston, just like the line, the way it looks, same way as you do there. Any thoughts on the over-under on that one, Teddy? 61.5?
Yeah, I was saying that the early sharp money pushed it down. Today there's been, the money's been trickling in on the over. And again, the sharper shops are leaning under. And your Bovadas of the world are the highest total. So Houston doesn't correlate well with over. Let's put it that way. I don't see the coup. If Memphis gets, to 5 touchdowns tonight, I don't see Houston covering the number.
No, I hear you on that one. Second game on deck tonight, Teddy. 305, 306. UL Lafayette versus Arkansas State. If you take a look at, past performances there, UL Lafayette coming in, winning back-to-back games, also covering both games. Went to Idaho. Not the easiest trip, not the easiest place to play in the Kibbie Dome, pulling down a 21-16 win. Then going against, bottom feeder, like let's say Texas State 24-7. Arkansas State's last 2 ball games beat Georgia Southern at Georgia Southern 43-25, and then handled a very poor Coastal Carolina 51-17. Number of the point spread pretty high, and this one opened up around 13, sitting around 11.5 now. Chris, I actually anticipated that game maybe even moving a little bit higher, but it's actually pulling back in the opposite direction. Over under. Pinnacle opened up really high, 71.5. Chris at 65. That number sitting right around 66 in that area. So one would think points would be on the docket. I think Arkansas State overall is the more talented team, but that line movement actually opening up at 13, now back to 11.5 at some sharper outlets. Interesting one there, Teddy. Any thoughts on this ball game tonight here?
Let me ask you a question, and it's like a rhetorical question. Did you bet the Sun Belt on the regular?
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to say on the regular, but it is an option. It's not like one of those conferences I don't dabble
in conference play. I'm going to talk about because in September I'll bet just about anyone. But in conference, you bet Sun Belt?
Yeah, sure.
You go back and track your results by conference.
Not really. No.
Yeah, I did. I went back and did. I track my results all kinds of weird ways because I want to know. What am I good at? What am I bad at?
Sure.
Every bet that I make is a spreadsheet. Every play that I release for my clients is in a spreadsheet, and I track it by all these different factors. The whole rhetorical question point of this was that I found over a 10-year span I didn't make money in the Sun Belt. I wasn't in conference games. I wasn't making any. I was losing money in the Sun Belt, and I stopped focusing on it. I'm like and it was the same story in the MAC as well. I'm like, if you're a specialist, if that's what you do is the Sun Belt, that's one thing. But when you're focused on the college football scheme, the college football card as a whole, the Sun Belt and the MAC, the one thing that I found that does work, if you find the one team that you want to be betting on or the one team you want to be betting against, Texas State last year, for example, or Central Michigan during their, it was a one that I bet on them every game for like 2 years in the MAC. And was comfortable doing so. They were, just so if you can isolate a single team, but in terms of handicapping on a weekend, there seems like there's a lot of randomness in the smallest college football conferences. And it's reflected. You can also do a study to see how the games finished in relation to the point spread. And you look over a big sample size, and you consistently see the Sun Belt and the MAC as the outliers, where there's the biggest gaps between the actual results and the point spreads. And it just says there's a more of an element of unpredictability for these conferences, for the lesser conferences there is for the major, not that you don't see flat spots and you have weird games in the major conferences, but that for a week in, week out, in my mind, Sun Belt's a little bit harder to predict, and I don't tend to get involved on a weekly basis. I didn't spend much time with Lafayette and Arkansas State.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I mean, the Appalachian State to Troy's, those two teams, sort of upper echelon. But you're right. I mean, you're looking at the Georgia Southerns, Texas State, Coastal Carolinas, Idaho's. I mean, look at Idaho. They're going to be knocked out of FBS pretty shortly. They're Coastal Carolina just stepping into it as well. Georgia Southern always, hovering around there. But you're right. There's a lot of monotony in that conference is probably the best word there. A lot of variance. I don't see that much of an edge either way. We even, on the right side of campus, me and the big man talked about these games, even the games tomorrow night. I'm not in love with any of these football games where I can find a decided advantage, and more so the two football games tonight. So it didn't really play or put anything out in that access there. But again, there's always a better game is what I like to say. Saturday, much, much better card for me on that. Now I'm going to keep it to that instance there.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're guys that are jonesing for action. If it's tomorrow night, whatever the games are, tonight, whatever. I mean, I understand that. But if you just bet small, please don't get in trouble off games that don't be loading up on some midweek Sun Belt game just because it's on TV.
NFL on deck tonight here. Kansas City, Oakland, good game on paper. Will the Raiders ever wake up? Kansas City finally coming off a loss. How are they going to respond? Short work week going on the road. A team that they've dominated. Andy Reid somehow owns the Oakland Raiders here. Coming in somewhat healthy for the Chiefs. I mean, Kelsey played last week, pretty much invisible in that football game. How he's going to recover from the head injury. Tyreek Hill got blasted late in that football game. They came out right away, said he didn't have a concussion. He's going to play tonight. We'll see how effective he'll be in that instance. We all know the injuries a couple weeks before, losing a couple of wide receivers. Alex Smith playing really good football here. That line, Teddy, has stayed at 3 just about all week long, just shifting back how much juice you're going to play on that 3. 71% of the spread tickets coming offshore. It looks like they're lining up with Kansas City. This game, to me, Teddy, I don't really like it from a side perspective, so to speak, because I can see it going either way. I would love to bet Kansas City. I think Kansas City's overall the better football team, but this might be one of those last-stand efforts. Who needs it more? And I think Oakland does. I'm actually leaning a little bit more, Teddy, to the under 46.5 in this game. Any thoughts on this one for you?
Well, I mean, we've seen, again, and we talked about this last Thursday, the success of the road teams on Thursday night.
Having good, yep.
And it's been an ongoing trend this season.
Yes.
And again, I got another guy who I've known in Vegas for 20 years, and this guy, good guy. You wouldn't believe for a second, some of the trends and yet he's like, this is what's working this year, and all I'm doing, he's got a database. He's like, this was working this year, and that's what I bet. And so help me, he's made a living for 20 years betting on this stuff. You're like, you didn't really bet that for a dime. He's like, yeah, I did, and it wins for him. So what's working this year is the Thursday night road teams in the NFL. And it's interesting. There's a big sharp square. Look at the sharp. Penny's at 3 even money, and Chris at 3 minus a nickel. Westgate at 3 even money. Canner, CG is at 3 even money. 5 dimes at 3 even money. And then, Bovada's right now 3 minus 20, and Sports Interaction is at 3 minus 15. So you can clearly see it in the juice off the 3. I'm not convinced the public side is the wrong side here. Yes, this is the Raiders season. Okay. So was last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Carr was back in the lineup. If you watched the game, you saw it.
Yep, sure did.
There's nothing going on for Oakland offensively right now. Carr wasn't right. Cooper's not right. Crabtree's not right. The receivers it's not, the passing game isn't working. The offensive line, with all the highest paid offensive line in the NFL. That one was the one game. Was it the week after they blew out the Jets and the offensive line went and stunk up? It was the game against the Redskins. You know, and we all said, what the hell was that?
Yeah, coming off 2-0, looking like kings of the world, dancing on the sideline, got pasted that Sunday night. Yeah,
it hasn't gotten any better on the offensive line since then. They're like, oh, it's there's something going on with the national anthem, and there's a problem with Oakland offensively, and I ain't playing a team that lost 4 in a row. I don't care, must win at home. I ain't playing the weaker team that looks broken, and maybe they fix it tonight. Maybe they were just. I mean, you look at again. The Raiders went 12-4 last year. They were plus 16 in turnovers. They're outgained by 0.4 yards per play. Their defense wasn't very good, and their offense was all it was all Carr throwing the football around. You know, now Carr's not throwing the football around right. Their defense still isn't any good, and they're not winning the turnover battle every week. You know, I wouldn't be blown away if Oakland pulls the upset tonight, but not with my money. If I'm playing, I can only play KC. But again, I haven't played the game, so I don't want to give a ringing endorsement of the Chiefs in a game that I have no money on.
Yeah, I mean, I would if I had to make a play right now, it probably would be on Kansas City. As much as I always like to build a case for the home dog in that environment, you're right about that. Oakland just doesn't seem. You're waiting for Oakland to break out, and if you're going to wait for somebody to break out, last 4 games, you're going to be pretty much bankrupt at that point. You can only see what the progressions would be. And David Carr, again, he's not out of the woods, still with a back injury there. You're right. The wide receivers, like Amari Cooper's been on a milk carton at this point. You're just going to lean on Marshawn Lynch. He hasn't shown that much to be that dominant of a runner. And it all gets down to defense as well. Who has the better overall defense, the better overall defensive coordinator? To me, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Andy Reid will have this football team ready to go tonight. If I had to play it, I would go Kansas City, but I feel a little bit more strongly, Teddy, on just taking the under 46.5. Methodical moving the football for Kansas City, playing good enough defense to pull out a victory. I could see this game being played somewhere in that low 20s range. I'll sit on that under 46.5 with a little bit more confidence than Kansas City here.
I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't talk you out of it. But look at this, man. I just checked. We got a bajillion comments, man. Thanks, guys.
They're wrong. I asked them which NFL game they wanted. They basically just went down and listed every single NFL game. So that's so we could pick and choose at this point here. Yeah.
Exactly. Somebody said something I wanted. No, I lost it. That's the thing. There's so many freaking comments.
Yeah, they roll through. I always wanted the chat box to me, Teddy, is actually too small.
Seahawks strike. Oakland sucks dick. Yeah. I love it.
We'll kick on another one. The first one that came up, Teddy, Panthers and the Chicago Bears here. Newton and Trubisky here coming in this football game. A lot of question marks if you're looking from a Carolina side. Is Kelvin Benjamin going to play? Are they going to get back Luke Kuechly in this one? We all know Chicago's been a pretty good home team, especially this year, beating the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. No small feat there. Also, opening day, you can say all you want. If they catch one pass at the end of the game on the goal line, they probably beat the Atlanta Falcons, and also having a strong effort against the Minnesota Vikings, getting the cover depending on which line you got late in that football game. Find themselves right back in that mix here, Teddy. Looks like the line opened up in that 4 range, sitting in that 3 range. So getting a little bit of respect for the Bears. Over under at 40 or 40.5, depending where you're shopping at. I like the job they've done with Trubisky. I don't think he's been that good of quarterback, but they're not letting him hurt the football team, leaning back on that defense. And you never know sometimes what you get with Cam Newton, a little bit banged up. If Kuechly's in this ball game, though, when we're taking out Teddy, I'm going to lean towards taking Carolina. If he's out of there, might give me a little bit of pause and say, why not the home dog in the situation? What are you thinking about here?
I'm not thinking about the total more than the side. And look, okay. Carolina's a good team, and Chicago was a bad team. Okay, I mean let's be real about this. The Bears,
yes, correct. I agree.
I understand the Bears won last week. We'll talk about if someone asks about Baltimore. We'll talk about them. Baltimore is a bottom 5 NFL team right now, and if your power ratings don't show that, adjust your power ratings. In my opinion, certainly a bottom quartile team. Maybe not bottom 5, but whatever. I have no problem with a little hyperbole on the show, baby. Mm-hmm. Baltimore's the worst team of all time.
Is Joe Flacco elite? Yeah, we get it all. Yeah,
exactly. Says I'm crazy. We need some clickbait. Yeah, but no, they're a bottom quartile team. But so with Chicago's win over the Ravens, and again, the very misleading final score because of the 2 special team touchdowns, the Bears dominated the game.
Yes.
If the Bears can't run, they can't win. All right, it's just that simple. Your handicap in Chicago is a 1 issue handicap. They need to hand the ball off 40 times a game, or they will not win. Okay, Trubisky threw the ball 16 times last week. They were playing from ahead. They're like Jacksonville. If they fall behind, they're dead. So one thing that the Panthers at times have shown the ability to do is chuck the football around this season. You know, I don't know that the Bears would necessarily react well to Carolina going up 14-0 and Chicago being playing from behind. And that's my biggest worry about the Bears side of the equation. From a total standpoint, one of my technical guys really likes the over in this game. I don't like it at all. Again, what the Bears want to do, they want to hand the ball off 40 times and rely on their defense. That's their style of play right now. And yes, last week's game went over because there were 2 special teams touchdowns. You know, this is not, I do not envision any scenario in which John Fox unleashes Mitch Trubisky to throw downfield to a receiving core that's only a little bit better than the Giants receiving core.
Yeah, correct.
Chicago has no wide receivers at all. They really don't.
No, I would agree with you on that game. So you're saying so somebody told you they're leaning on because I mean, I say it, if I'm trying to build a case for this football game, I would lean under 40.5 just because styles make fights here. And you're right. You're not going to ask Trubisky to say, hey, you know what? We've been managing you here, you know, throwing somewhere in the mid-teens. Why don't we just open it up here and let you throw 35 times in this football game? Don't think it's going to happen. I think Carolina's going to have that same perspective saying, hey, let's go in. Let's make this kid make the mistake, you know, force him into some mistakes. We'll play it, you know, close to the vest somewhat on offense. You know, hopefully Cam Newton doesn't go full Cam Newton, just throw the ball all over the place like he was doing in the fourth quarter versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I still would lean on Carolina in this situation. I want to see Luke Kuechly get back. I know he went back to practice today. Only did individual drills, so it was limited there. They've been cautious with him in the past, Teddy. I wonder if they're going to let him play on Sunday. But obviously, you know, even in the football game last Thursday night, Luke Kuechly in the football game, then disappears for the second half. The Eagles took control of that game. There's not too big of loss in the NFL other than Luke Kuechly obviously losing, you know, an all-star and all-pro cornerback. That's a tough loss for him there. If he's playing or not playing in this game, Teddy, your perspective on this one, does it change it all? Or you just say, you know, it's just one guy and I'll let the schemes, you know, dictate this game here?
Well, that's the beauty of non-skill position players. All right. And it's the same story across sports, you know, in the NBA, in college basketball. You're a college guy.
Yep.
There's a star, and then there's the glue guy or the energy guy or the huge role or the low post defender that makes the whole team work, you know, or whatever. And if the star gets hurt, the line will move 5 points. You know, if one of the other key players gets hurt, no, the line doesn't adjust at all. Same story in the NFL. You know, everyone's saying, oh, my God, Aaron Rodgers is worth 2 touchdowns. No, Aaron Rodgers isn't worth 2 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers plus an offense that has 3 third stringers projected to start this week, plus a secondary that, oh, by the way, is minus all 4 of their starters going against Drew Brees. That's worth 2 touchdowns, but not Rodgers to Huntley. So, again, to make a short story long, I love making short stories long. That's one of the things I like about this particular podcast.
Yes.
Is we're not on a time. You know, it's not like, all right, check your watch. We got to get through 20 games.
3 minutes, go. Yes, yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, Sportsbook's like that. We have a ton of info that we have to get through, and I don't get a chance to ramble. And hopefully I'm rambling that has some interest to some people. But hopefully, if not, nobody's watching. And now, of course, I lost. What game are we talking about?
The Chicago Bears game there.
Well, whatever. They suck.
I think that pretty much wraps it up on their offense, correct? Yeah, they play a little bit of
defense. The injury, that linebacker.
Injury yep, go ahead.
Of course, you know, when you talk about Kuechly being hurt, well, how much will he affect the point spread? None. Maybe a half point.
Yeah.
Is he worth more than a half point in or out of the lineup? Absolutely. In the NFL, the quarterbacks get the love. The skill position players get the love when it comes to injuries and how much they matter. And we all know, you know, when Lane Johnson, when your tackle gets hurt, it matters. You know, when J.J. Watt gets out, gets hurt, it matters. When Josh Norman's out for the Redskins, it matters. And the point spread doesn't tend to adjust off those type of injuries nearly as much as perhaps it should.
You're right. Next up here, we're going to talk about some injuries in this football game. An intriguing one to me, Teddy. 4:25 Eastern Time start, 1:25 Pacific. Seattle, New York Giants, 471, 472. Wilson and Eli Manning going out. One of the probable games, I guess, if you're I don't want to say a public better, but if you're just vested in football just to watch it, not very many people out there had the New York Giants going in and beating the Denver Broncos outright in that football game. Settle down, less distractions. No way you can move the football. Next, before you can blink, the Giants are mounting a lead and playing very good on defense here, sort of circling the wagons. Coming back here versus a rested Seattle team. I think Cliff Avrill's probably going to miss the rest of the year. I know the updates came out today looking for a second opinion. One defensive end, a little bit banged up in the secondary, I believe one of the corners, but Richard Sherman will be there. The Legion of Boom will be there. Pete Carroll's going to be there. Coming off of that win, coming back now, we saw the line opened up maybe around, I see the early indicators there. Chris opening up at 7. Most of the lines this week were somewhere in that 6 range, but now they're popping up with some 4.5. Looks like 4.5, probably the prevailing line across the board. Teddy, looking at this just from an outsider's perspective, you say, the Giants, they're unless in something the most improbable thing comes making the playoffs where they rip off all these, wins with, a half a staff at wide receiver. Sterling Shepard might come back this weekend, but he's not the end-all be-all guy. What are we looking at, or what should we pick on here? A rested Seattle team versus a New York Giants team at home? It's kind of a tough one just to say, hey, no, Seattle should be able to beat this team. The Giants stink. But I know it goes a little bit more than that. Olivier Vernon might come back this week, going to add a pass rush, because we all know if the one way to get after Seattle is through their offensive line, the Giants can put pressure on Russell Wilson. What are we looking at early indicators here, Teddy?
Well, it's funny. You look at some of the stuff like, I don't know, yards per play numbers, all right? Mm-hmm. Meaningful NFL statistic. For the season, Seattle's gained 5.2 yards per play, the Giants 5.1. All right, what about defense? Well, for the season, Seattle 5.2 yards per play, Giants 5.4. Mm-hmm. That ain't a touchdown road favorite. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially I would like to look at it too.
Seattle touchdown road favorite. What's Seattle's defensive weakness this year? You're going to be stunned. You see what the Seahawks numbers are yards per carry against?
No, yeah, it actually doesn't stun me, because that's the way you want to get after. A little bit undersized on the defensive line. You can run the football in that team. But the one problem I have is, though, Ted, if you counteract that, what about the New York Giants on that end, though, running the football themselves?
Well, the Giants ran the football effectively the first time last week.
They did, you're right, which is why when I watched that game, stunning, because the Giants look like a better football team without of their top weapons, which sort of gave me a little bit of chuckle. But go ahead with your point there. Go ahead.
I don't know. My gut reaction was that my initial reaction was it's an overreaction. The line moves an overreaction. The Giants are not any better. They're still the Giants. And then you start to look at the stats, the hard stats, and you're like, no, I can't. I'm not excited about laying with Seattle here. The Seahawks don't stop the run all that well. Laying a big price on the highway with the public team is not, Seattle's not that good this year. Seattle wasn't a team that I came in saying, I want to be betting on the Seahawks. Seahawks had a great window for about I think it was good 3 years where they were money winners. First year, second year, third year. Pete Carroll made me a lot of money. This Seattle team's not that Seattle team from a value standpoint. They're priced as a top 5 NFL team. And you saw the Rams game. The Rams kicked their ass. Seattle was lucky.
I know. That was a shame, because I was on the Rams there, and sort of.
No, it wasn't a shame, because there's so much money to be made with it. Don't ever think that. I don't mean to yell at you. You're a pro, but when you lose a bet like that, when you have the Rams, all right. When you lose a bet, you go, this is great. You're not saying this is great, but you say, this is great. Now I can bet the Rams again next week and the week after, and I can bet against the Seahawks, because these teams are, Seattle wasn't the better team. They weren't even close to being the better team.
Yeah.
So.
Even taking a look at Seattle on the road this year, Teddy. Not on the road this year, but, getting them out of that environment there. They go to Green Bay, 17-9, take a loss. They go to Tennessee, 33-27, take a loss. They beat the Rams 16-10, even though being outplayed in that environment. Now you're going to come again back to the East Coast. A couple years ago, they came out and did fairly well, but you're right about that. It's hard for me to back a team and Russell Wilson makes magic every single week. It's jailbreak city on their offensive line, and somehow he rolls around and gets completions. But the one thing that can give them problems, DRC is going to be back this week, going to add a little bit to that secondary again. I just need Olivier Vernon back on the opposite side of JPP, Snacks Harrison in the middle. They can push that pocket and create some issues there. It's just a matter of, Eli Manning, who's been good this year. I ride him even it's funny saying how bad the Giants are, but it's not Eli's fault. In the past, it's Eli Manning. What kind of throw was that? What are you doing out there? He's really managed his time wisely this year. And even last week, under duress, against a really good defense, against, wide receivers that sort of really technically shouldn't help you out at all. He did have a very good game under that aspect. So that line moving down actually doesn't surprise me, but just that public better of me says, man, Seattle should be able to roll over the Giants until you actually look at the numbers there. So you are correct in that spot.
You are correct, sir.
Correct. The winner. What else we got on the chat box at it? Raiders are lousy as home faves, but very strong as a home dog, says Chris Blanchard. What do you think about that, Teddy?
Not interested.
And how about the next one? Ace Farmer
says, okay. Again, you give me a long-term trend and angle, and I could give a shit. What have the Raiders done under Jack Del Rio? Okay, this quarterback, this coach, that's meaningful.
What do you mean? You don't go back to Tom Flores about what they did at home?
I know, but you find some of these stuff, and again, it sells plays. People want to people want to sell plays, and I understand. I'm in the tout business. I sell plays too. There's always a marketing angle on this stuff. And it is what it is, but. No, I'm not a believer in what happened to the Raiders 10 or even 5 years ago has any influence on what's happening with the Raiders right now. You get a coach? All right, I'm interested in the coach's trend. But no.
An interesting game here, Teddy, 473, 474. Denver, who we saw, somewhat embarrassing on Sunday Night Football, is now going to go out to play the Chargers in, you can call it home field, you can call it whatever it is. There'll probably be just as many Denver fans out there. The one spot that's interesting to me, line opens up 1, depending on where you're getting at. Pretty much a pick 'em now, -1, flip-flop, whatever sportsbook you had, over under 40.5. Teddy, I always like, and I Ted last week, I picked the Chargers to beat cover the spread versus Oakland. Actually won the game outright. But looking at this game, I like Phillip Rivers usually in that give me 3 points, give me 3.5, give me some points in that atmosphere. Now they're going to actually have to win this football game in order to cover. Looking at this game, Teddy, Denver coming in a little bit banged up, losing one wide receiver. Demaryius Thomas, came back to practice, but he's banged up as well. Quarterback banged up also. Any early indicators for you on this Charger game that you're looking at?
I mean, the Chargers defense has played well.
I like them.
They played well against Kansas City. That's as good as any team's looked against KC this season. They played well at times when it mattered most against the Giants. And again, last week, you make case it was Carr bad. You make case with Sandy, the LA good. Sandy LA.
I say San Diego just almost over 50% of the time, Teddy. So
forever.
Yep.
It'll be a problem. But so here's the Giants just ran the football down Denver's throat. So, there's your case for the Chargers. Real simple. One defense, you have the better defense in a pick 'em range. If it's the better defense, because Denver's defense is pretty good. And they might just have had a bad game off the bye, and, they didn't bring their A game. And Simeon's hit or miss, You get the good Simeon, Denver wins. You get the bad Simeon, well, maybe not so much. One thing that we have to say about this game is that there's no home field advantage for the Chargers in LA.
None. Zero.
And they went 0-3 straight up and against the spread their first 3 home games. Remember the Eagles game? There were more Eagles. It's not like there's a bunch of people from Philadelphia in San Diego. It's not like, oh, yeah, all the guys from Philly go to San Diego or Miami. And yet, even so, there were still more Eagles and Dolphins fans at StubHub than there were Chargers fans. So, yep. I think what we're seeing from the point spread, the money's come on Denver, at least is a partial reaction to that.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. How about the Sunday Night Football game, Teddy? 475, 476, Atlanta and New England, Ryan versus Brady. Something still not right with New England here. Now, looks like the lines opened up 4.5, depending on where you were looking at. 3 now looks like the prevailing line, playing a little bit of juice, maybe -3.5, plus 100s are being found out there. Just an interesting game. Is New England going to be able to get it right? How are they going to match up and go back and forth? I could see this game going both ways. It's hard to, who would ever think you're watching New England, only laying 3 at home? They're usually, 7s and 9s and 10s at home. But this isn't your New England team from the past. Defense struggling a little bit. But again, not much confidence looking last week. Up home, up big, up at the half. The Dolphins, Jay Cutler of all people, comes back and beats you at home. Now you're going to have to go out on the road. Dome team on the road. Interesting matchup, though, with a high total, Teddy, 56 over on the total. What are we looking at here? It's
so funny because everybody that you talk to about this game, they really don't like one side or the other. It's like you're like, New England, man. How do you lay points with New England, right now? and the Patriots aren't right and all of that. I'm a little bit fixated on the Atlanta side of the equation because I think Atlanta is more broken than New England is. New England, I'm confident that Brady and Belichick will get better as the season progresses. And that defense that got torched early by a bunch of good offenses is going to be better than we thought it was. And of course, I'm buying the New England's going to get better side. And I have New England as my top power rated team back ahead of Kansas City this week. Although I will say this, they're my numerically lowest top power ranked NFL team in I don't even know how long. I'm sure it's been at least a decade. There's no great teams in the NFL this year. There really aren't, at least not so far.
You're right.
But Atlanta's broken. What happened last week? They're up 17-0 on the Dolphins. Okay. Cutler throws another red zone pick, and it gets wiped off on a roughing the passer penalty. And that's one little, it's not even a gut punch. It's a flick, man. All right, good team responds fine to that adversity. Atlanta fell apart. All right. And that's on the heels of falling apart the previous week. And that's on the heels of stealing one in Detroit that they didn't deserve and stealing one in Chicago that they didn't deserve. That's on the heels of what's going on with Sarkisian and the play calling. I mean, I don't know there's a bigger coordinator drop-off than Kyle Shanahan. And I understand Kyle Shanahan, the final 20 minutes of that Super Bowl was as bad as it gets, and I will never forgive him for that. He cost me a lot of money, and he ruined my night, and he ruined my week. And I couldn't, whatever. It's the worst bad beat in Super Bowl history. And it's all Kyle Shanahan's fault. All of it. I will never forgive him. But Kyle Shanahan was the guy who designed that freaking offense. It was the best offense of the NFL all year. It was the best offense of the NFL for the first 40 minutes of the Super Bowl. And you see the drop-off in the creativity with Sarkisian. The offense is not working for extended stretches of ball games, and that's a problem. I don't trust them to go up to New England and play well.
I hear you there. Teddy, running out of time here. One last quick one we're going to hit here on the docket, 4:55, 4:56. Somebody was asking about Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. Dalton Roethlisberger are going to match it up. Line looks like it's sitting around 5.5. Over-under at 40.5. We all saw Pittsburgh last week. Finally got back to the basics, running the football to set up the pass. Worked very well, played good defense, knocked off the NFL's last undefeated team. Rested and ready. Cincinnati always plays Pittsburgh tough, or would seem play Pittsburgh tough in that division. Andy Dalton going to step in an environment, new coordinator, since he's had the new coordinator, much better, keeping control of the football, running the football, using the 3 running backs in that set. Just some quick thoughts on this game, Teddy. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, what are we looking at here? 4:25 Eastern time, 1:25 Pacific on Sunday here.
Ace Farmer, how much money do you have in the Super Bowl, Teddy? Enough. Trust me. And I had some nice payouts, too. I had Falcons minus 10.5. I had Falcons
minus 17.5. That didn't go great for no reason there, folks. You know what I mean?
And there was another, Carr, who is it? Somebody asked Carr over, it wasn't Adam last Adam likes it over 238. I disagree. QQQ Wilson asked Carr under 238. Yes. I don't think Carr is right.
Like the under, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now, Cincy Pittsburgh, Steelers defense might be really good. Don't be fooled by that Jags final score. Jags had, everything they got was they had 2 pick sixes in that game, and finally at the end, after Roethlisberger had turned it over for the 5th time, the defense wore down. The defense was put in a shitty situation multiple times in that contest, and they performed well. They dominated Baltimore the previous week. They dominated Kansas City last week. Everybody's healthy on that defense. That's a concern for me. Of course, we know about Roethlisberger home road dichotomy, enormous home road dichotomy. That being said, his last home game, he threw threw the ball over 5 times against the Jaguars. And even last week at Kansas City, they got Le'Veon Bell going, and the passing game still wasn't clicking. Roethlisberger still didn't look right. The series history here is all Pittsburgh. The sharp money's all Cincinnati. I'm not thrilled about the concept of laying a price with the Steelers right now. I would agree with the sharp money in theory, but having played this particular matchup so many times, you're just convinced, all right, there'll be, since you'll be down 4, they'll take a sack at the end of the game. Or Burford, someone will get a stupid personal foul call to keep a drive alive. I mean, we've seen it so many times over the years. It does feel like a field goal game, though. If I had to play it, I could only take the dog.
I hear it. Teddy, time goes fast here on Thursdays. As you know, folks, every Thursday night, Teddy's going to be here talking some football, Major League Baseball, NBA, you name it, Teddy. Want to thank you for your time tonight. Want to leave the people with something before you get out of here?
Yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Hey, well, whatever. Thanks. You guys want to stay here for an hour. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And,
we have a good time. And Teddy, you'll be back again next Thursday. Check Teddy out on Sportsbook, but this will close it down for the closing line, 10-19-2017. Enjoy the games tonight. Lots of stuff on the docket. Major League Baseball, NFL, some college football, hockey. You name it, you got it here. Check us out at SBRodds.com. Also at SBR Sportspicks on Twitter. Give us a follow here and subscribe on YouTube. But from all of us at SportsbookReview.com, good luck on your wagers, and we hope we helped you beat the closing line tonight. Take care, fellas.